On today's Locked On Jayhawks, I'm going to tell you why, despite some of the national media being a little bit down on KU, they are back, and Bill Self is going to bring this team back to the promised land in the 2025-26 season.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're going to talk, is KU back? I know, like, when you think of that with like Texas and Miami and football and stuff, it's like there was a reason to ask that. It's 2 down years at Kansas, one in which they got a 4 seed and one an NCAA tournament game. But we're going to ask that question. Is Kansas back? And why I think maybe they're being slept on a little bit from the national media. Areas where I think they'll be improved, because you have to have a reason why I think they'll be back to what we've been accustomed to with Bill Self and his time at Kansas. Areas, though, still where they might be worse, and areas where it's kind of up in the air and it's TBD. But overall, I think this Kansas team will be better than it was certainly last season. Now, maybe if you're making the comparison to 2 years ago when they were healthy with Kevin McCullough, I don't know. That would be an interesting debate as well. But let's get started here in a second. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money, and you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year with Monarch Money. Okay, so you look at some of the national media, and I've seen places that have Kansas outside their preseason top 25 right now. I've seen, you look at like the Joe Lunardi early season bracketology is just stupid to begin with. Everybody's 0-0. Bracketology is supposed to be a reflection of people's resumes and what that resume reflects. Nonetheless, pedestal off. There's some places that have them down. I have Kansas. To me, I think they're closer to being a top, 10 to 12 team in the country, which is more in line with where we've seen teams in the Bill Self era. I think most places have them closer to being that like 15 to 20 range, which I think that's understandable. Again, I still think maybe I'm the high man on that compared to that, but I can at least understand that. Some of the ones where it's like not top 25 and stuff, that is crazy to me. But I think this gets them back to the Bill Self era. And so you look at like Ken Palm ranks, for instance, like this is the ranking that Bill Self went on in Ken Palm. So he goes 18th his first year, then 11th in his second year. From then on, 2006 until 2020, these are Bill Self's rankings, final rankings in Ken Palm at Kansas. 8th, 5th, 1st, 14th, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 8th, 7th, 12th, 3rd, 6th, 9th, 17th, 1st. And even some of the recent years, 3rd in 2022, obviously they won the national championship. That's more important. 9th in 2023. But these last 2 years, 24th in 2025, 27th in 2024. And they were also 27th in 2021. So 3 of the last 5 seasons, they've been outside the top 20. I think this one skews more to being one of those that's inside the top. Again, if we're to take that metric, like most of the seasons in there are inside the top 12. And I think this one will wind up being there. What are the reasons why? What areas are they most improved from where they were a season ago? Or really, if we compare this to the last 2 seasons, because that's how we're judging this. We're judging this as like, okay, it'd be one thing if it was like 1 down year for Kansas. We've seen that before. We saw that in 2018-19, and they responded the next year by, having the best team in the country. We saw them get blown out in the second round and be a 3 seed, a team that, if they didn't finish the season strong, might have been a 4, 5, or 6 seed in the 2020 to 2021 season, and then the following season they win a national championship. We've seen the one-off before where they bounce back the next year. We haven't seen it 2 straight years under Bill Self, really, unless you want to count, the years where they lost in the first round and back-to-back years in Bill Self's second and third season at Kansas. But even then, the second team that lost in the first round had a bunch of young players, had like freshman Mario Char. Like, you were building to something that obviously ended up being coronated in a national champion. So that's why this question becomes pertinent. But I think the first big one I look at is a superstar perimeter player. I'm going to give you lots of stats and that they were this last year and why I think they're better this year. This is not one that I have just a pure stat for. It's just they have a star. Darryn Peterson gives you the opportunity to have the best player on the floor each and every night. And if we want to separate this out between an overall superstar and a superstar guard, because you can make the argument that Hunter Dickinson was a star in college basketball and multiple-time All-American. He would put up unbelievable numbers for KU. There is a difference, though, from being a star, from being maybe the best player in the country. And there's a chance you have that with Peterson versus Dickinson might have just been a star. And so, like, I think of last year when Kansas played Texas Tech, that game in Allen Fieldhouse, Hunter Dickinson, again, like good player, productive player for Kansas. He was not the best player on the floor. That was JT Toppin, who was the Big 12 player of the year, right? You might even be able to argue that like Darryn Williams was the next best player on the floor. But point being, you had to have that argument. And there were several games last season where Kansas went into it and, Hunter Dickinson was good, but maybe Kansas didn't have the best player on the floor. That's not something I don't think you're going to have to worry about this year. Now, maybe you make the argument when they play BYU, if you're a H.A. Debanza believer, or maybe there's somebody who is in the college game, like similar like what a Walter Clayton was this past season for Florida, where it's like that dude's a first-team All-American. He's the best college player, even if Peterson will be the best overall pro. But you would certainly think that list of players that is going to be better than Peterson, and it might be nobody, to be clear, is going to be on one or two hands that you could name. It's not going to happen very often, but it's having we hear guard play wins in March all the time, and Kansas having somebody who can dribble the ball, can create his own offense, right? Teams could take away Hunter Dickinson late in the game. They could double team him and force somebody else to beat you if you're Kansas. They could sink in on the paint. What happens if you do that with Darryn Peterson? Like, he's going to find the open guy, or he's going to dribble out of it, or he's going to make something happen. So having that superstar perimeter player, you think back to the seasons in which, maybe this will be a show we do, because I'm just thinking of this right now off the cuff. What are the seasons that Bill Self has had an All-American guard? Okay, I guess it depends how you define guard. Like Ochai Agbaji, is he a guard or is he a wing? He was an All-American. That team won the title. If we're just talking like lead guards, initiating guards, so to speak, right? Let's go back to his beginning years at Kansas, right? You think of Mario Chalmers. Okay, they go to an Elite Eight in 07. They win a national championship in 08. Now, Chalmers was never All-American. I don't know why I just blanked on that. Anyway, but Sharon Collins was a All-American, obviously, for Kansas. That team got a 3 seed in 2009. That team got the number 1 overall seed in 2010. I would say that was 2 successful regular seasons for KU, right? NCAA tournament can be a crapshoot. Tyshawn Taylor was 3rd team All-American in 2012 for Kansas. And that was a season in which Kansas ends up going to the national title game. Let's see. Frank Mason was obviously National Player of the Year, 1st team All-American in 2017. That team finished 31-5 and made the Elite Eight. 2018, Devontae Graham, 1st team All-American. That team makes the Final Four. 2020, Devon Dotson. The team goes 28-3 and is the best team in the country. So when Bill Self has outstanding lead guards and All-American lead guards, they tend to do pretty well. So that is one big reason, and that might be the most important, because that is how good I think Darryn Peterson is, and I think people are sleeping on that in terms of where this Kansas team is. If Peterson comes in and he's a 2nd team All Big 12 performer, he'd be a good player. That could relate to maybe Kansas being, a team who's the 24th best team in the country, maybe at that point. But like, if he is as good as you think he's going to be, if he is as good as being the best player in the country, I do think they surprise people. Now, beyond that, offensive rebounding, I think, is one that you can look at. So the last 3 seasons, these are Kansas's ranks respectively. So going in reverse chronological order, I guess, of Kansas's offensive rebound rate nationally. 163rd in the country last season, 286th in the country the year before, and 179th the season before that in offensive rebound rate. This has not been a great offensive rebounding team the last 3 seasons. Well, Bill Self has had 11 top 50 offensive rebound rate teams. So it's not like it's just something he doesn't stylistically do. If he has the horses, they will get the offensive rebounds. Again, 11 of his teams have had top 50 offensive rebound rates, and 7 of those 11, including 7 of the most recent 9 that were able to accomplish that feat, finished as top 10 overall offenses. What that tells you is when Bill Self is able to get a lot of offensive rebounds, get those extra possessions, turns out when you have a good coach who's good at drawing up plays and has good talent that can score off extra possessions, they're going to have really efficient offenses. I believe this can be one of those top 50 offensive rebound rate teams. Flory Bidunga, excellent offensive rebounder. You look at the 4 position for KU. If it's Trey White had over a 85th percentile offensive rebound rate. I forget the exact numbers. I think he might have been over the 90th percentile in the offensive rebound rate category for Trey White when he's in at the 4, right? If you were talking about playing 2 big basketball with Bryson Tiller, he's a big dude. He should help you on the offensive glass as well. Paul Mbiya is somebody who's a good offensive rebounder as your potential backup center. They have athletic guards. Like Darryn Peterson's going to be a good offensive rebounder. Melvin Council is going to be a good offensive rebounder compared to other guards. Elmarko should be a good offensive rebounder compared to other guards because of their athleticism. This should be a good offensive rebounding team, and I think that's one reason why they'll be even better than they were a season ago. I think length is an easy one to point to and say, they should be better than last year because they're longer than they were a season ago, right? I mean, you look across the board, it's positional size and versatility. It's nobody who's like short necessarily. It's all players 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 6'8", 6'7" with good wingspans. And that's the thing, the length. Flory might only be 6'9", but he's got a 7'2" wingspan. Bryson Tiller has like a 7'2" wingspan. Samis Calderon has like a 7'2" wingspan. Paul Mbiya has like a 7'8" wingspan. Even the guards, like Peterson has like a 6'10" wingspan. I think Elmarko's probably got a pretty decent wingspan when you look at him play and watch his game. I think Dawson's a plus wingspan. Council's a plus wingspan. This is a very long team, and that has positive impacts in a lot of ways on the basketball court if you're Kansas. I want to continue on where are some other areas that they're better. What about some areas where they might be worse, though, if we're being honest, and some areas where, TBD, I think it could go either way. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't more than a budgeting app. Monarch Money is more, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Sometimes you just have that month where it feels like you're constantly spending. Maybe it's bills, maybe it's your car, doctor's visit, maybe you went to Disneyland and all the money is piling up. Well, with Monarch Money, it'll help you avoid that surprise and feel like you're in control. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year with Monarch Money. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the show. Don't forget, you can check out Locked on College Football or Locked on College Basketball for your second listen every day. Okay, other reasons that I think Kansas will be better than they were a season ago or maybe a couple years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, right? I think that length that we kind of talked about is going to lead. Also, the athleticism. I think this is going to be a good athletic team, more athletic than last year, right? You'll be more athletic at the 5, obviously, with Flory and Mbiya than Hunter Dickinson. I don't know that you'll be more athletic at the 4. Like KJ was a good athlete. But like, I think Peterson will be more athletic than what Dewan was for you as kind of the lead guard. I think Council comes in as being a very good athlete. Elmarko coming off injury, he's a very good athlete. This should be a good athletic team. Cole Rosario off the bench, Samis off the bench, very athletic team. I think though both of those things should lead to them being better at forcing turnovers and getting steals than they were. So they were 286th in turnover rate defense last season. They were 253rd in defensive steal rate a season ago. There's no reason why this team can't be better than both of those numbers in terms of, turnover rate and steal rate. It's not like Bill Self is running the press or something like that, but like there's no excuse not to be, at least middle of the pack at it. Like if we look at some previous seasons, this will actually be interesting. So if we go back to 2023, they were 65th in the country. 2021 was 99th. Most of the years they're between 2016 through like 2022, they were ranked between 150th and like 190th outside of that 99th year in 2021, like every season. That's at least nationally average. Can you just be nationally average at it? That would be a huge bump. That'd be a huge improvement from where you were these past 2 seasons. And I think they can because of both those things. Transition play on offense was something that low-key kind of dipped off for Kansas this season. KU averaged 10.2 fast break points per game. That put them in the 66th percentile nationally. So that is still solid. That's above average to good. But in conference play, which is really the back half of the season, it showed Kansas got a lot worse at it. They were much better at it in the non-con. From conference play for Kansas, they were down to 8.3 fast break points per game. That was in the 41st percentile during conference play. So if you just look at them during conference play this past season, when they started having their struggles, they became a below average transition scoring team. They had just 8 transition points in the NCAA tournament loss. And that's right around what they were averaging, right? Bill Self teams typically are really good in transition. Like Tom Izzo, Bill Self teams, a lot of times these teams are really good in transition. And you look at the previous seasons for Kansas, where their percentile ranks were in fast break scoring. The previous season, again, they were just 66th last year, but 41st in conference play, 41st percentile. So you don't want the lower number. You want the higher number. 89th percentile the year before that, 92nd percentile the year before that, 90th percentile the year before that. This has been a really good transition team. Bill Self typically has good transition teams. I think because of the athleticism on this team. I think because of the playmaking from the guards like Darryn Peterson. I think because you have a bunch of rim running bigs like Flory Bidunga, Paul Mbiya, and just athletes that you can throw out all over the floor, whether it's Melvin Council blazing in transition or Samis Calderon possibly. This should be a much better transition team than we saw over the back half of last season. That's another reason they could be better. I think playing multiple ball handling and combo guards should make them better. That's something that is typically the best Bill Self teams have multiple ball handling and combo guards. You think of Frank and Devontae, you think of Sharon, Mario, and Russ Rob, you think of Tyshawn and Elijah. The best teams kind of have this ability. Devon Dotson and Marcus Garrett, right? That's a very different iteration, but both those guys were just that, right? And they have a bunch of them. Elmarko Jackson, Melvin Council, obviously Darryn Peterson. Like, you're going to be able to kind of mix and match what you want to do with those guys. You can play Jayden Dawson as a 2 or as a 3, gives you a lot of different options. And so ideally, that will also lead to better turnover rates offensively. Kansas was 167th in the country in offensive turnover rate. Can you get that to be a little bit better, right? That would be another area you can be a little bit better. The next one, this is just low-hanging fruit, but like getting to the free throw line. Kansas was 354th in the country. 354th. Let me repeat that. 354th in the country in free throw attempt rate last season. There were 364 teams in the country. That is really, really bad for Bill. Obviously, that was the worst free throw attempt rate of the Bill Self era. Like, you go back even the year before, the 2024 team was not great at getting to the free throw line. They finished 186th in the country. They were a 32% free throw rate. This past season was a 24%. They're going to be better getting to the free throw line. They just are. Whether it's the athletes able to get the advantage on somebody, I don't know what leads that, but it's going to be better, right? That's a reason that you should be better. And then I think, not maybe if you compare to last year, because going into last year, we were super excited about the roster and the depth and all the pieces you had. If you compare it to the one 2 years ago, it is a deeper roster, even though it might not be the deepest roster. I think it's deeper than it was 2 years ago. Now, maybe that's a little hindsight goggles with where it finished, but that's another reason I think you could be better. So what about areas where they might be worse? What about areas of similarity? Let's finish up with that. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks. Derek Johnson here. And again, you can check out Locked On College Football or Locked On College Basketball for your second listen every day. Thank you for joining us on this show today. All right. So we went over a lot of reasons why I think Kansas will be better than they were the past couple of seasons and why I think they'll be back to being, a top 10, 12, 15 team in the country under Bill Self. Honestly, wouldn't shock me if they got like a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. But where are some areas where they could actually be worse or be around the same? Because we can't just be like, oh, they'll be better at everything, right? That's just not a realistic way of looking at things. I think 3-point shooting is one where they now this is interesting because like from a volume perspective, I think they'll be better than last year, but from a percentage, I think it's going to be worse. So it's kind of an interesting conversation. They were 88th in the country in 3-point percentage last season, 35.4% on the season. But they were only 299th in the country in 3-point attempt rate. So I could see that going up to where this team is taking more threes than last year. I don't think they're going to launch threes. That's just never really going to be the case under Bill Self unless it is like necessity where it's like, oh, we're playing Svi at the 4. We have to launch threes, right? I don't think that'll be the case for this year, but I do think they will attempt more than they were last season. I don't know how many guys, like if we're to take that number, 35.4% that they shot last season, how many guys on this Kansas roster are you confident are going to shoot that level or higher, right? I don't know, like maybe Peterson gets above that. Again, freshman, he could shoot 34% and still have a great All-American season at Kansas, but the 3 ball isn't, the biggest strength. Or he could shoot 40. I don't know. Elmarko, like he could shoot 36%. He could shoot 28. He was a 27 his freshman year, right? Yeah, you look at like Cole Rosario, kind of a streaky shooter off the bench. How much is he going to shoot? And how much is he going to play? Those are real questions there. Jayden Dawson, he's somebody that I think I would pick to shoot over that. But like, I don't know, Trey White is low volume. Like I said, I think they can get past the 3-point attempt rate they were last season. I don't know if they'll get the percentage that they were last season. Now, the question is, well, here's the answer. I think what matters more is, are you being respected? Are teams defending you from 3? Kansas could shoot 32% from 3 this year, but if teams are defending the guys that they need to be defended on Kansas, right? Like if they're actually spacing out on Trey White, if they're spacing out on some of these guys, that is more valuable than Kansas shooting 35%. I don't know. Like What is the difference between 35 and 32% over the course of the season? It's probably a good amount of made threes, but is it enough that all the opportunities that you lost from not being respected, from teams being able to sag in the paint, from teams being able to double or triple team Hunter Dickinson, that's more valuable. So it's more valuable if you're respected. And I do think there's a little bit more balance in who's going to be respected on this roster. So from that sense, I think there's more overall gravity, but there's not that one, guy who I'm confident is going to shoot 40%. There's also not a team that I'm confident is going to shoot even above 34% on this year's team. So it's complicated when you compare last year to this year's 3-point percentage or 3-point shooting. What's better, what's more important, that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know that the efficiency will quite be there as it was a season ago. Fouling opponents, I could see that being an issue for this team a little bit. Last year's team was 85th percentile in free throw attempt rate defense. They were really good at not sending teams to the line. They were also 95th percentile in player foul defense. So a good job of not fouling teams. Now you could say, okay, is it a good job not fouling teams? Or is it that your defense just wasn't there? And so you don't even have a chance to foul them, right? When you're giving up baskets, you're giving up uncontested layups or wide open threes, or that at times you were, and this could go either way, that you were like, okay, I'm not going to pick up a foul, so I'm just not going to foul him and I'll let him have the bucket. I can get the 2 points back. I can't get the foul back, right? And that can go both ways. Sometimes you need the resistance. Other times that is the smart play. So I don't know, but like Flory, for instance, Flory Bidunga obviously played less minutes than Hunter Dickinson. Flory averaged the same amount of fouls per game as Hunter Dickinson did last season. So that should tell you that Flory has to work on the foul stuff. Now, a lot of freshman bigs come in and struggle with foul stuff right away. So I'd imagine Flory is going to get better at that in year 2, but how much better is kind of the question. Mbiya, I think, is going to be somebody who comes in and probably picks up a good amount of fouls per minutes played. Bryce Tiller, again, like Bryson Tiller is somebody who is a young player. Like I said, young big men sometimes struggle with fouls. So you could be in a situation where your big men are in foul trouble a good amount. Plus, if KU is this ultra athletic, aggressive defense, that's going to rack up more fouls than being a passive defense, right? So I do think, even though that's something that Flory will probably get a little bit better at this year, that is something that you're going to be fouling teams more often than you were, I think, this past season. But maybe that can be okay, right? If you're playing more aggressive out of it and you're forcing teams to beat you at the line, and like they're not going to call everything, they're just not. I'd rather be aggressive and you over foul than, I guess, the alternative, which is like you're too passive and teams are getting easy layups, but you're not sending them to the line, right? The last one here is like, I don't think you really have a center who's going to play 35 minutes a game, which has its pluses and negatives. The negatives was that I don't know that Hunter could ever fully exert the defensive energy needed for a consistent, full every minute that he's in the game, because it's just hard to ask of a guy to play that many minutes at center. I don't think Flory's going to play that many minutes. It's probably going to be closer to 24 to 28, somewhere in that range. That can be a good thing. That can also put you in a situation where if Paul Mbiya is not ready, if Bryson Tiller's not ready, then you might be like, oh, I wish we had a center who could play 35 minutes. So that would be one there. Now, areas of similarity that could go either way, right? They could be better at, they could be worse at. One of them is 2-point defense and block rate. Kansas was 21st nationally last season in 2-point defense. They were 33rd last season in block rate on defense. So those are both very good numbers. That sets a very high bar for can this team get up to that point, right? But I'll say this. Flory Bidunga is a better shot blocker than Hunter Dickinson, right? And you're backfilling because it's not as simple to be like, oh, well, Flory's better than Hunter, so it's easy, done. Well, okay, but who's taking the minutes behind Flory, right? Because Paul Mbiya coming in, is there a chance Paul Mbiya is even a bigger shot blocker than Flory, or at least similar? So if you're getting somebody similar as your backup big to what you had last year in terms of being a good shot blocker, you have a better starting center in blocking shots. That's helpful. Now, we'll say KJ Adams' block rate was twice of what Trey White's was last season for Illinois. And if Trey White's going to be your 4, you had a better shot blocking 4. But if Kansas plays some too big basketball, that can help out a little bit there too. I do think Kansas just in general, like maybe you get a little bit more shot blocking and bounce and quickness and length and ability for guards to stay in front of other guards on this Kansas defense. I could see it finishing similarly. I could see it finishing actually a little bit better. Like if I had to take one side, will this Kansas team be better or worse at block rate than last year? I would take better. The 2-point defense, though, that's more complicated. That's not just blocks, right? So that one might be more of a push, where last season was really good at that, right? Because you were able to clog the paint with Hunter and KJ, 2 strong guys. And this team doesn't have as many like just strong guys. Like you ain't going through the body of KJ Adams. You might be able to go over him because he's a little bit shorter, but it's going to be tough to go through. Like same with Hunter. Like, you might be able to speed by him, but like if you get a one-on-one or he's there with his big body, like you ain't able to kind of go through him. The last one here is defensive rebounding. Kansas was 65th nationally last year. They were 4th in the Big 12 in defensive rebound rate. Actually, a year before, they were 1st in the Big 12 in defensive rebound rate. And the big reason why is Hunter Dickinson. He had a top 35 national defensive rebound rate last season, which if you only look at high major players, he was 12th in the country in defensive rebound rate a season ago. I will say Hunter Dickinson's defensive rebound rate, as good as it was, 25.2%. Flory's ain't that far off. Flory's was 23%. I do think it probably helped Flory that he got to play with Hunter at certain times to where the matchup he's getting is more of a 4-man where it's going to help him on the glass. Like there were probably too many times where there were certain stretches, certain games where it felt like he was giving up too many offensive rebounds, though the rate might not really show that. Now, the flip side is, well, wouldn't Flory's defensive rebound rate go up without Hunter taking some of the rebounds, right? So you can kind of look at that either way. And, I guess now that I'm talking myself into this, like White is a big upgrade as a defensive rebounder from what KJ Adams, like Trey White's defensive rebound rate was 17% last year at Illinois. KJ Adams was close to 10%. So you do have a better rebounding for, I think KU has better rebounding guards than they did last season. That comes with the athleticism. They should be able to crash the glass better. So honestly, yeah, I might be talking myself into this being slightly better here, but because Hunter was such a good force as a defensive rebounding hub, I do think that at least deserves some respect that like there's a chance they're, not better and that they're slightly below last year, or that they're right at the line that last year was, even though I have kind of talked myself into it, maybe also being a little bit better for this Kansas team for next season. All right. Share this with the haters. Is KU back? Yeah, I think the answer is yes. I think they're going to be back to being good this year. Am I fully back on the idea that like they're going to be the best team in the country? They're going to be a 1 seed. I don't know. I don't know that I'm fully sold there because I wish they would have that other second, star piece, but I am sold to back to being the idea that they're going to be a Big 12 title contender. They're going to be a Final Four contender. And this is going to be one of those Bill Self teams that once again is kind of, top 10, top 12 in the country. That'll do it for this episode though of the show. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe. See you next time for another edition of our Locked On Jayhawks.